the market settles what we call equilibrium. Why the market settle? Because at the equilibrium price, quantity supply equals to quantity demand. We call that equilibrium quantity. In other words, at this equilibrium price, when the market settles, what the sellers want to sell, they are able to sell. What the buyers want to buy, they are able to buy that quantity. And therefore, no one would have any incentive to deviate from this equilibrium, because at this equilibrium price, the quantity the sellers want to sell, they can sell this quantity. The quantity the buyers want to buy, they can buy this quantity. Everyone will be happy. No one will be going home empty-handed. So, if we put this in the graph, it means supply and demand, put it in the same graph. This is where supply and demand equal each other. At this intersection point, this is the equilibrium price. And this is where the equilibrium quantity supply and quantity demand equals each other. So, this is where the market will settle. Everyone will go happy. The sellers will not be stuck with unsold products. The buyers will not go home without getting what they want to buy. So this is why the market will settle there. And now, how can we figure this out? If we have the supply and demand equation, we can figure that out. For example, if the supply equation is such that P equals to 2 plus 0.5 times the quantity supply. And we have the demand equation. The demand equation is that P equals to 35 minus 5 times the quantity demand. So now, when supply equals demand at this equilibrium price, that means at the equilibrium price, according to the supply equation in here, if this is the equilibrium price, then this will be the equilibrium quantity. Because at equilibrium, quantity supply equals to the equilibrium quantity. For the demand, if this is the equilibrium price, this quantity demand equals to the equilibrium quantity. Because quantity supply equals quantity demand equals to the equilibrium quantity, where the two curves intersect in the graph. And now, what we can say is that based on this supply and demand equation, now the supply is 2 plus 0.5 times equilibrium quantity equal to equilibrium price, according to this supply equation in here, equals to demand. Demand is P equals to 35 minus 5 times the equilibrium quantity, the equation down here. So when we have the equation for the supply and demand, we can figure out where the intersect each other. So this is where supply equals demand. In other words, 2 plus 0.5 times equilibrium quantity equals to 35 minus 5 times the equilibrium quantity, because they both equals to the equilibrium price. And therefore, 33 equals to 5.5 times equilibrium quantity. Equilibrium quantity equal to 6. So we can solve for the equilibrium quantity with only 1, 2, 3 lines of calculation. Once we understand what the graph represents, the intersection, supply equals demand, at the equilibrium price, quantity supply equals to quantity demand. So once we get the equilibrium quantity, we can substitute this back, let's say, to the supply equation. So the equilibrium price equals to 2 plus 0.5 times the equilibrium quantity, which is 6. Then it is equal to 5. Because according to the supply equation, 2 plus 0.5 times equilibrium quantity equal to the equilibrium price. Alternatively, we can use the demand equation to figure out the equilibrium price. 35 minus 5 times the equilibrium quantity also equal to 5. So, either way, you will get exactly the same equilibrium price, whether you use the supply equation or the demand equation. It's very simple. But I would recommend my students to use the supply equation because they have addition. Over the years, I observed in the midterm and the final exam, when they use the supply equation to figure out the equilibrium price, it is less likely for them to make a mistake compared to the subtraction. And now, there is no guarantee when a market first exists. It will hit equilibrium instantaneously. So imagine we have a new product. So we have demand and supply of this new product in the market. So when this market begins to exist, there is no guarantee everyone will be all the way to the equilibrium right away. So if the market is not in equilibrium, do we have a mechanism to bring the market to equilibrium? Remember, one of the principles we talked about last week was market tends to reach equilibrium on its own. In other words, the next step is what is the mechanism for the market to adjust to reach equilibrium. So if we understand this mechanism, then it means we understand how the market functions, how the market adjusts. So this is the fundamental understanding of market operation. So let's look at this example. If this is supply and demand, and we have the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. If the market reaching equilibrium, that will be the equilibrium point. Equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. And now, imagine this is the market for fresh roses on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And now, if the market, for some reason, on 14th, the price is this low, obviously, this is not the equilibrium price. What would happen? At this price, it is below equilibrium. What the buyers would like to buy, the quantity demand at this price is here. And what the sellers plan to sell, according to the supply, this is the quantity supply at this price. So from this example, what we see is when the price is below the equilibrium level, the quantity demand will be greater than the quantity supply. What people plan to buy will be a larger quantity than what the sellers plan to offer to the market. And this is what we call a shortage. So this implies we have a shortage in the market or excess demand. Demand is in excess of supply at this price level. So how can the market reach equilibrium if 9 o'clock in the morning on the Valentine's Day, the price of fresh roses below the equilibrium price? So on Valentine's Day, a lot of the people need to buy fresh roses as a gift to their lovers or their friends. And now you have more people wanting to buy roses than what the sellers plan to offer. Now imagine you see a girl. The first time you ask this girl out on Valentine's Day, of course you want to bring some flowers. And without the flowers, you won't have a second chance. That will be the last time you see that girl. So you'll be desperate, trying to find some roses. In other words, when we have a shortage, the buyers will be desperate to get the product. So remember, this is a competitive market. When the buyers are desperate to get the product, just like on eBay, if you really want to get a product on eBay, what do? You offer a higher bid. So when we have shortage and the buyers are desperate to get the product, they will be willing to pay higher price. So they will be indicating in the market. It's like they will be calling around, calling all the florists. Do you have roses? And they said, yeah, we have roses, but they are all being full. And how much is that? $50 a dozen. Well, if you have some, call me. I'm going to pay you $100. So this is an indication the buyers will be willing to pay a higher price if there's a shortage. In the graph, this is what happens. When they are willing to offer a higher price, then higher price, some buyers get price out of the market. because now it's too expensive. So if the price for a dozen of roses, like only $30, yeah, I would buy some flowers for my wife on Valentine's Day. But if the price going up to $40, what the heck? We've been married for 35 years. So 1 year without roses is going to cost us a divorce. So I have to save some money. So some buyers will be priced out of the market and the price goes up. The quantity demand decreases. But this is not going to bring us to equilibrium because as the buyers indicating their willingness to offer a higher price, this sends a signal to sellers. Now in the market, the price is going up. Buyers are willing to pay more. And this sends a signal to the sellers to increase their quantity supply. And therefore, in the graph, there is the movement along the supply curve. A higher price signals the seller to bring a larger quantity to the market. And this is how this gap is being closed. In the end, the price will stop rising when we hit the equilibrium. So from this example, what do we see? When the price is not equal to equilibrium, for example, the price less than equilibrium, we have excess demand. When the price is high, higher than equilibrium, we have excess supply. Excess demand. Buyers initiate offering higher price. They are willing to pay. And that reduces quantity demand at the same time increasing quantity supply as people see the price in the market is rising. And that restores equilibrium in the market. So when the price is above equilibrium, the opposite is true. Excess supply means that the sellers are offering a larger quantity than what people would like to buy. Now we turn the table around. That is, now the sellers initiate their willingness to accept lower price to clear the inventory. In other words, they are putting on a sale. And this sends a price signal to the buyers. The price in the market is falling. And that triggers the increase in quantity demand and reduce in quantity supply. And that also restores equilibrium. So this is the adjustment mechanism. Whenever the price is not in equilibrium, whether excess demand, excess supply, we will figure out who initiates the adjustment. And in the end, how adjustment takes place to bring us back to equilibrium. So this is the adjustment mechanism. All right? And now, how the market adapt to change. So if the market is initial in equilibrium, But something changes. And how can the market adapt and help us get to the equilibrium point? Supply and demand. So the market initially in equilibrium. So let's say this is the market for organic vegetables. So the market for organic vegetables initially in equilibrium with this equilibrium price and this equilibrium quantity. And now, change in taste. People become more health conscious. So if now people become more health conscious, obviously this will no longer be the equilibrium in this market. Now, for us to explain how the market adapts to changes, we have to answer 3 questions, step by step. That is, when there is a change, the first question we must ask is that, is this change going to affect supply or demand side? So we need to distinguish whether it is going to affect supply or demand side. So if there's a change in taste, where the taste factor comes in, the taste belongs to the demand determinant. In other words, the change in taste is going to affect the demand side because taste is a demand determinant. Next, the second question we ask is that, is this change going to result in movement along or shift? So this is the second question we're going to ask, so that we know what to do with this change. So taste is an anchor. When an anchor changes, it's going to shift. So after the first 2 questions, we have figured out 2 things. First, there will be a change on the demand side, and this change comes as a shift. The third question we ask is, this change going to result in favorable or unfavorable impact on the quantity? In other words, would it cause increase or decrease? So if this is a shift, that means it's going to shift left or shift right. If it shifts right, it is favorable because the quantity will be higher. If it shifts left, that will be unfavorable because the quantity will be smaller. So if people becoming more health conscious, of course, they are going to buy more demand shift to the right. Now, in tests, I have seen this over the last 25 years. A lot of students looking at this question, they figure out the shift and they say, all right, so this is where the new demand intersects the supply. This will be the new equilibrium price. This will be the new equilibrium quantity. And done. Now, if you see a question like this, and you give me this answer, you will get at most 30% of the mark. Why? Because I will not be asking you to do something like this, so simple. You have to explain how you move from the initial equilibrium to the new equilibrium. That is, you have to tell the story, how this market functions, and what mechanism in the market can help the market adapt to this change, to take us from the initial equilibrium to the new equilibrium. So how can we tell the story? To tell the story of adjustment from the initial equilibrium to the new equilibrium, there's always a good starting point to tell the story is the initial equilibrium price. Always start with the initial equilibrium price to tell the story, and the story will flow naturally. So, in other words, at the initial equilibrium price, the increase in demand from the initial demand curve shifting to the right to the new demand curve, which is an increase in demand. What do we see? This is the shift. The demand curve shifts to the right with this change. So, at the initial equilibrium price, after the demand curve shifts to the right, ignore the old demand curve because it has moved to the new position. What do we see? At this price, this is what the buyers would want to buy. And this is what the sellers want to sell at this equilibrium price. In other words, now, the shift creates an excess demand. So it creates an excess demand, which is exactly the same story about the roses on Valentine's Day. So you can put the entire explanation in here. How the buyers become desperate. They want to get the product, willing to pay higher price, sending a signal to the sellers to pay larger quantity to reach the new equilibrium. So that would be the adjustment mechanism. That would be what you will get the full mark. The graph and explanation. A lot of the time, students are losing marks, not because they don't know the question. They know the question. They lose marks because they are being careless. A question like this, you have to explain and relate your explanation to the graph. If you just give me a graph, you're not going to get full marks. So therefore, you need to be careful. And now, we understand how the market adjusts. Next, prediction of market outcome. When a change takes place. That is, when there is a change in the market, can we predict where the market is headed? Now, a lot of people would admire those who work in the financial sector, It's like, wow, they make so much money. As a stock analyst, as economists. They're making money using what you learned today. The basic fundamentals, how the market functions. In other words, if they can predict where the market is headed, they don't need to know exactly where the market is headed. As long as you know where the market is heading, you take one step ahead of everyone. The first mover advantage. Early birds get all the worms. This is how they make money in the stock market. So, in other words, using our example, supply and demand, the initial equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. So imagine, 20 years ago, if you see people having a trend, becoming more health conscious on organic products, then the demand shifts to the right because they become more health conscious. Then you can predict equilibrium price would rise and equilibrium quantity would also rise. So if 20, 15 years ago you saw this trend and you know how the market functions, what would you do? I would start buying whole food stocks. When people becoming more health conscious, I would start buying stocks of firms that grow organic products because the demand for their product will go up and the price will go up, their profit will go up. When their profit goes up, their share price will also go up. And this is how we make money in the stock market. All based on fundamentals. As simple as what you learned in the second class of the first year economic course. So, what we see is increase in demand. You will see increase in price and increase in quantity. This is what you can predict, the movement. The opposite is true. If this is the demand, this is the supply. When people becoming more health conscious, then let's say this is the market for New York fries. Now, you know, New York fries is all deep fried with oil. Greasy, high sodium, high fat, high cholesterol. Not healthy at all. So when people becoming more health conscious, they're going to cut back on the consumption of New York fries. And therefore, the price will drop, the quantity will drop. So, same change in taste, more health conscious. But for this product, it will result in a decrease in demand. The price will drop, the quantity will drop compared to the initial equilibrium. What about supply? If we have equilibrium in the market, like this, and now we have better technology. We know when we have better technology, supply curve will shift in this direction, and therefore the price will drop, the quantity would rise. This is what we saw in the computer, desktop or laptop. Over the years, for the same quality of the laptop or desktop, But you have more people buying, more people getting laptops, more people getting desktops. We have better technology. So this increase in supply results in a drop in the price and increase in quantity compared to the initial equilibrium. And now, what happens if the opposite is true? For example, green belt concern less developed or new houses. So if people concerned about green belt, that is, we want to have more land, more trees, and fewer houses, there would be less land that the government would allow to build houses, which is opposite to what Doug is doing. Doug is stealing our green belt land to give it to the developers to build new houses. So if this is the concern, then we would have fewer houses supplied to the market, because all these developments may be blocked by the green belt concern. And what we see is higher price and smaller quantity. A drop in supply results in increasing price and a drop in quantity compared to the initial equilibrium. So by looking at the shift or the change in supply or demand, we can predict the market outcome. So let's put all this in a table. So increase in demand, decrease in demand, increase in supply, decrease in supply. The change relative to initial equilibrium, price and quantity. So based on the graph that we just figured out about the changes in supply and demand, increase in demand, the price will rise relative to the initial equilibrium. The quantity will also rise relative to the initial equilibrium. When we have a decrease in demand, the opposite is true. An increase in supply, the price will drop relative to the initial equilibrium, but the quantity would rise relative to the initial equilibrium. A decrease in supply, opposite is true. So this table helps us predict the movement in price and quantity relative to the initial equilibrium position for any change in supply and demand. Now, would that be good enough? Of course not, because we're not 9 o'clock yet. I will give you something else. That is, there is no rule in the market that will say you can only shift supply or demand one at a time. So what if they are both shifting at the same time? And how can we predict the market outcome? And what intuition can we rely on to explain the movement in price and quantity in the market? So for example, this is equilibrium price and quantity with the supply and demand. Like this. Now, another concern about the test and exam is that a lot of you when you are asked to draw a graph to explain your answer, you draw the graph this way. I know everyone wants to save the tree, use less paper, but don't forget, when we print out the test paper, the tree is already dead. You cannot save it and make the tree die for a good reason. Use the paper. So when you are asked to draw a graph, make sure your graph is big enough so that the TA can read what you draw. If you cram everything in the small graph and all the lines are wiggle, the TA cannot see and cannot tell what you're doing, the TA cannot give you any marks. Alright? And now, back here. Suppose we have an increase in demand. The demand curve shift to the right, like this. And we also have an increase in supply. The supply curve shift like this. When both supply and demand shift at the same time, in this example, they happen to be shifting in the same direction. How can we explain the change in price and quantity? What we know is that first, according to this table, the increase in demand, this is what we expect to see. Higher price, larger quantity. The increase in supply, this is what we expect to see. Larger quantity, lower price. Now, for one thing we can be sure is that the quantity, unambiguously, the quantity will rise relative to the initial equilibrium. But Houston, we have a problem. Look at this. The change in the price, they are moving in opposite direction. When you have increase in demand, the price is supposed to go up. But when you have increase in supply, the price is supposed to come down. So what will happen in the end when we have this shift at the same time? Let's get back to the graph and figure it out. So, increase in demand, that is, the demand curve shift to the right by this amount. This is the amount of the increase in demand. Remember, the initial equilibrium price is always a good starting point to tell the story. So at the initial equilibrium price, the demand curve shifts to the right by this much. The supply curve, on the other hand, shifts to the right by this much. Increase in supply. And once we have the information about how far these two curves shift, then we can use this logic. That is, increase in demand will trigger upward pressure on the increase in price. Increase in supply will trigger the downward pressure on price. And in this example, what we see is that the increase in demand is greater than the increase in supply because demand shifts this much, supply shifts only this much. So when the shift in demand is greater than the shift in supply, that means this is a larger force to be reckoned with. And as a result, because it's a more powerful force, in the end, this force will prevail. So then these four will overwhelm the others. In the end, the price will rise. And this is exactly what happened. The new equilibrium price is where the new demand cuts the new supply. And this is higher than the initial equilibrium. And this is a tool based on logic, based on knowledge. So if you know how this tool works, then you know how the market functions. Of course, you still need to know when a change happens, how far the demand curve will shift, how far the supply curve will shift. That will be the subject of applied microeconomics. That is something that a student study in third year, what we call econometrics. But this is the basic intuition behind how people can predict market price up or down when both curves shifting at the same time. All right, that's something today.